back, viewers, from that brief break. Our topic for today, once again, is understanding the growing cost of democracy. Uh, Before we broke off, uh, Henry, in your discussion, you alluded uh, to how consequential, how beneficial political party financing is, especially when the representation of political parties in parliament seems to be more skewed to one angle, or seems to be more skewed to one political party than that does not favor the others. With that there in mind, what do you think is the value? Okay, what is their value for money in financing of political parties, especially this is for you, Henry, especially the fact given those dynamics that you mentioned earlier on. Over to you, Henry.
Thank you very much, Annette. Of course, the one thing I had forgotten when I was speaking about the Electoral Commission is that they are seeking 60 billion to procure new office premises, because they must move. But back to your question, is there a value for money? You see, the intention was that political parties should receive public funding so that they can be ignited, okay, to gain strength and be used as the vehicles to propel our democracy. Now, when you look around, because of the formula that was decided and agreed upon and passed in law, it favors only the party in power. It also favors only the parties that have representatives in parliament. And yet, there are political parties that have performed very well. They have representatives at district level, at sub-county level, even more numbers than those that have one or two representatives in parliament. And therefore, the original intention of trying to kickstart political parties that had been in limbo for quite a long time doesn't seem to be working. But that said, the manner in which this money is being managed, political parties, there is no system in place that requires political parties to ensure that the public funds, or if you will, the taxpayers' money that goes into these political parties is put to proper use. What we have learned over the years is that this money is also appropriated released in some form of arrears. So all the time it is coming late. It is coming at the end of the quarter. It is coming after 2 quarters. So because it is coming in arrears, the conditions that surround its management are those that are shrouded in darkness. It is never accounted for. You cannot go to any political party website or any platform and find out how much and what they used for the money. The biggest culprit is the party in power, the NRM. The records that are submitted to the Electoral Commission are not accessible to the public. The Auditor General does not audit this money. There is no value for money. I would argue that most of this money is being actually abused by the political parties that are receiving it. And when they receive it, they treat it as some form of bonanza, or if you like, handshake. And therefore they feast on it at the expense of the taxpayer. As we have said, the Electoral Commission has now received 45 billion, and these are already greasing their hands and whetting their appetites to feast on the money. So I don't see value for money because political parties remain as weak as they were. Political parties are event-based. When there are no elections, they don't swing into action. They always give excuses that the regime is ruthless. But we know they're not doing enough. They're not being creative enough. And so for me, so far, with what we have seen, there is no value for money yet. For me as a taxpayer, my pain is in learning that this money goes into political parties and is received as some sort of a bonanza. They feast on it without accountability. There is nothing, no provision in law that requires, for example, that guides on how this money is going to be managed, accounted for? How can we live in situations like this? So that's my take, Annette.
Yes, well, um, from the discussions that we're having, Eddie, it's coming out so clearly that we seem to be spending a lot on democracy. I would like to know your view. What is the value addition of this kind of spending, and does it make Uganda any more democratic? Anyway, what is your take, Eddie?
Thank you, Annette, for this. Now, when we understand the cost of democracy in Uganda, I want us to understand two things. Uganda's democracy is costly in terms of the amount of money that is being invested in politics and electoral processes. That is number one. But also, it is costly because we are trying to bite more than what we can chew. In many cases, you've seen the electoral commission coming up to say that in spite of the amount of money being given as the electoral management body to finance electoral processes and monitor and deliver them, we still have no sufficient amount of money to deliver a rightful or uncontestable electoral race among the parliamentary, presidential, and even at local government. So the activities are so much more than what we can finance. So we're trying to look at cost in terms of inadequate amount of money that we do have to finance politics, but also cost in terms of the cost of delivery is so much compared to the outcomes that we are supposed to get out of these democratic processes. But secondly, when you look at it from the fiscal policy perspective, we know that the major drivers of a fiscal policy in order for government like Uganda to get money are majorly four. One, there must be an adequate tax base where Ugandans can be able to substantially contribute towards paying tax that provide financing for government, from which finances they're supposed to get money for democracy. But you know that only in Uganda's tax environment, a 10-90% policy rule thrives. Where you find that only about 10% of the individuals, of the organizations, of the corporations pay only pay, pay money that finances 90% of the whole economy. So in such a kind of thing, you cannot expect that a country, an economy like Uganda can get substantial amount of money to finance democracy. Secondly, there must be a good government expenditure. When government spends on the population, when government spends on the citizenry, we are increasing the amount of disposable income, of the amount of investment the citizenry has, in order for us to contribute towards monies that can finance democracy. Thirdly, when you look at the public debt, if you have looked at Uganda's budget 2020 to 2023, about 15 trillion is going to be used for debt refinancing. This is about 40% of the budget. Now, you ask yourself, if 40% of the budget is going to debt refinancing or debt financing, what is going to happen to the rest of the cost centers, including democracy? And lastly, if you look at the national budget, again, you're going to find that the national budget is skewed towards more of consumptive spending than investment spending. Whereas most of the persons were very eager to know that, for example, the parish development model has come up and people are going to invest in the recent allocations. The permanent secretary mentioned that we have not allocated money for the parish development model because we are not sure whether we can get that money. Now, if government is not spending on its citizenry, where are we going to get an adequate tax base to ensure that we can finance our democracy and democracy-related costs? At the end of the day, we are going to find out that the figures that we do have are not commensurate with what we earn. And I can give you another example. I was reviewing the current budget figures 2022-2023. I found out the following. Governance and security is taking 6.4 trillion shillings out of the budget that we do have. Administration of justice is taking about 389 billion shillings. Digital transformation is taking about 217 billion. Then regional development is taking about 1.6 trillion. Public service transformation, public transformation is taking about 207 trillion, and legislation, oversight, and representation is taking 686 billion Ugandan shillings. Where is the money for human capital development? Because when we demonstrate that we are investing in democracy, that democracy must translate into better service delivery, better representation, and better ideas on the floor of parliament or the floor of councils, wherever the case might be. But to answer your question directly, I want you to relate this to Uganda. That we have invested a lot of money in Uganda, but has the deplorable, has the desperation within the communities, within the electorate reduced? Can we see poor people reducing in numbers? In any case, they are they're increasing. Can we see the effects of COVID-19 receding? In any case, we're increasing. Can we have, are we seeing a hungry electorate receding? Are we seeing a captured legislature receding? Apparently, we do have a legislature that is captured, and it does not work based on its consent, but on the consent of the captor. We are looking at a lack of credible laws that regulate financing and accountability of public funds. For example, that those that go to political parties. Most importantly, we are seeing political parties actually behaving like parties in a marketplace. We do not have an accountability mechanism. We do not have a reporting mechanism. We do not have a system that keeps a political party in check and balance. So you can see that the whole system has been turned upside down, despite the amount of money that is being invested through electoral processes. And lastly, to answer your question, the question is, are we getting value for money? Is Uganda more democratic as a result of the offshore of investing in democracy? The answer could be picked from one of the following. Do we have better representation? How many ideas you see on the floor of parliament, for example? How many bylaws and ordinances are being delivered by the local councils and the district councils at higher level and lower level that do favor the persons that they are representing? How many ideas have you seen most of these politicians presenting on the floor of parliament? Out of the 529 MPs that we do have in the current parliament, how many of them have you seen come on the floor, of, even in the media, to present issues that do matter about the plight of the people? How many of them have delivered appropriate development and appropriation of their constituencies and even their communities that we do have? If we do have the budget allocated about 6.9 trillion into human capital development, including agriculture, including education, but including health systems, we are ready to see how much education is going to improve and how much health is going to improve. At the end of the day, like one of my friends mentions, this is a regime survival enterprise, and we cannot see value, and Uganda is not more democratized than what we should be, depending on how much we have invested in this democracy in Uganda. I want to thank you, Annette. Back to you.
Wow, it is clear from the discussion that a lot needs to be done, especially given the fact that if we are spending that much money, it should really manifest in some form of better representation or better accountability or service provisioning and the like. So having had that discussion, Abel, I'll come to you. What do you think Uganda should do to see a difference, or to reduce the growing cost of democracy, or rather to see a difference in our leadership? Over to you.
Since we don't have enough time, I will only say it's very simple. What Uganda just needs to do is to cut the bloated political and administrative structures that we already have. That will save us a lot of money in terms of the number of leaders we have in parliament, local government, the number of appointments made by the president for RDCs, presidential advisors, and all those. We don't need that big number. We just need a small number of committed politicians and civil servants who are patriotic about their country, and all they do is they do things which see that their country progresses. But the problem that we have a lot of persons or personnel who are in politics and also technocracy. Some of them are appointed because of their loyalty to the powers that be, but they don't really mean to serve Uganda. That's why we find that despite the increasing costs of democracy, citizens are paying a lot of money in terms of sustaining and facilitating democracy in Uganda. But we are not seeing the reduction in terms of human rights abuses. We are not seeing a number of responsive and accountable leaders increase. Also, the status of our democratic institutions is questionable in terms of their independence and strength. So we need, if we are to invest, we need to see that there are changes in some of these things. We need to see human rights abuses reducing. We need to build strong and independent democratic institutions and ensure that the leaders we produce are responsive and accountable to the citizens. But if you don't see this and we are still expending a lot of money on democracy, then I don't see any value in it. So we need to scale down on the number of these bloated political and administrative structures.
Thank you,
Back to
Abel.
you,
And
Annette.
I'll take those to be your parting shots. Over to you, Henry. Would you, in these few minutes we have remaining, would you give us your parting shots on this?
I thought to have about 10 minutes to go on it. If I see the clock clearly. Yeah, but the point he's making is this, that I think citizens must understand that democracy is never cheap. And what is the alternative to democracy? We have tested the alternative. The alternative is to plunge into chaos. You have a regime that will come here and govern by decree, and a few men will return to the bush. I hope there are still bushes left or forests left, because as last time I checked, they had cleared all of them. And then you have anarchy. So when you reflect on those, then you cannot help but conclude that democracy is still expensive, but democracy is a better option compared to the other militant options. And therefore, what we have to do is to make sure that we develop a form of democracy that works for the people, a democracy that fits our income. I was very encouraged when I discovered that in Gambia, they use marble or pieces of stone. They go and pick them up there. They use drums. This whole notion of spending billions of money going out to print ballot papers and then shipping them can be avoided. Of course, I have heard the president has been advocating for an electronic voting system. If that were to be in place again, it would reduce on the amount of money that we are spending on democracy. But the point I want to reinforce is the point Abel made, the point of bloated democracy institutions. The parliament filled with 557 people, MPs, where you're going to give each MP less than 2 minutes to speak. What kind of point can you make in 2 minutes? What kind of researched opinion can you present in 2 minutes? So this has diminished parliament into an arena for political dramatist persona, so that they just stand up to be seen, to be talking, whereas talking nothing. And therefore, I think we need to bring it down. We don't need that size of parliament. We don't need that size of presidential advisors. Many of them will spend the entire term in office without even seeing the president. We don't need that. We don't need 86 ministers, cabinet ministers, some of which, excuse me, you will see on TV and you wonder they're minister of which country. and then you are reminded, oh, of Uganda, and then you are like, where has this person been? You have never seen them. These are all increasing the cost of public administration. They're increasing the cost of democracy. I think it's important to get on the drawing board. I think it's important to rethink the kind of democracy we want to have, but most importantly, to understand that there is no correlation between the numbers and quality of services. In fact, you will have better quality of services if we had fewer numbers in parliament, fewer numbers of presidential advisors, fewer numbers of districts, fewer numbers of ministers, fewer numbers of everything. Because in this world, you don't need what is it called, uh, battalion of people to make a decision. That is my take. Back to you, Annette.
Yeah, thank you very much, Henry. Eddie, would you give us your parting shots as well?
Annette, thank you so much. The Ugandan brand of democracy is a copy and paste from the developed world, and the brand of democracy we do have is a precondition for development financing. When you look at it from the economic perspective, that you either indicate to us that you are implementing this type of democracy, or recede in terms of financing. And for me, it has proved to be too costly for us because we cannot afford. It's better for now that in Africa, and in particular, we identify, become more frugal in trying to finance politics that makes Africa better, but also Uganda better. Can we reduce on the representation in order for us to reduce the costs of administration and management of political processes? But also, can we prioritize? If you ask why would we hold an election for already a predetermined electoral outcome using Kayunga as an excuse, why did we have to have elections in Kayunga when they had already determined who the winner will be? Me, I think that is a waste of time in Africa. And for as long as we continue to have a failed democracy in terms of managing costs and in terms of having expectations of the population or citizenry, coups in Africa are not about to end. The recent one being Burkina Faso, Gambia, Guinea, most of those West African countries, and some in South Africa and North Africa. I have had coups. I'm scared whether that should not come to Uganda and maybe other East African countries because of the cost of democracy that we are having here in Africa and in Uganda in particular. And lastly, I would strongly advise that let's expand the revenue basis, because like I mentioned at the beginning, we are costly because we don't have the financial wherewithal. So if we have an expansionary fiscal policy that brings money into the population, brings money into investment, probably we can identify a bigger financial base to finance the bloated democracy processes. And in this case, if you don't do that, then we are not about to develop democracy in Uganda and Africa as a whole. I want to thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Eddie. And once again, thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for joining me on the show. Once again, I've been Annette, your host. And of course, discussions such as this cannot be exhausted in 1 hour. So we encourage you, our viewers, to continue the discussion on our various social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and you can also comment on our YouTube channel as well as LinkedIn. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. See you next time.